silver-streaked tears across a cold blue sky, a roar like a rolling thunder that seems to shake the mountains themselves. Down below, jagged white-capped ridges and a gray-green scrub of plains blur into a theater of smoke and radio static. In the thin high air over the Korean peninsula, two jets snap into view, one, a graceful, swept-wing American fighter with a yellow nose and a glinting canopy. The other, a dark, slab-sided shape with a thin fuselage and a menacing intake. For the pilots within, those split seconds decide everything. Life or death, triumph or the long slide home with a damaged machine. This is the story of the F-86 Sabre, the airplane that carried America's jet-age hopes into the crucible of Korea, locking wings with a Soviet-era threat and forever altering aerial combat. Part 1. Why the Sabre? The need for speed. At the close of World War II, the sky had changed. Jet engines rendered piston fighters obsolete. Speed, transonic aerodynamics, and control at high Mach numbers were the new battleground. The United States, watching developments in Germany and the Soviet Union, pushed aircraft manufacturers to build fighters that could meet the jet threat. The heart of the problem was simple. Conventional straight-wing designs hit a brick wall as they approached transonic speeds. Airflow became unstable. Control surfaces lost effectiveness. Compressibility effects made dives dangerous and unpredictable. Aviation needed a design that could slice through that thin frontier between subsonic and supersonic flight. The solution lay in the swept wing, an idea borrowed from the lessons of captured German research and from theoretical work in aerodynamics. Sweeping a wing back reduces the effective airflow normal to the leading edge at high speed, delaying shock waves and improving control in the high-speed regime. North American Aviation, already famous for the P-51 Mustang, took that idea and leapt into the jet age. Part 2. Who built it? North American Aviation and the team. The F-86 was born at North American Aviation's Inglewood plant, under the leadership of a design team that knew how to turn bold ideas into production realities. The same company that had built the legendary P-51 Mustang adapted its production prowess to build a lightweight, robust jet that could be produced in quantity. Designers and engineers refined the airframe, the bubble canopy, the laminar flow considerations, and the new hydraulic and flight control systems required for jets. The Sabre's elegant silhouette, a smoothly blended fuselage, swept wings, and a pilot's canopy offering near 360-degree visibility, is the result of deliberate choices to trade complexity for performance and pilot situational awareness. By the late 1940s, the prototype had flown. By 1949, the Republic of Korea was still years away from war, but the first production Sabres were already being delivered to U.S. Air Force units. Part 3. Design and innovation. What made the Sabre special? If a fighter is a set of compromises, the Sabre struck a nearly perfect balance. It combined the swept wing for high-speed performance with a single, reliable jet engine. Its structure used proven manufacturing techniques and rugged materials so it could be maintained in forward bases. Crucially, the F-86 incorporated improvements in control systems that made it more forgiving at transonic speeds than many early jets. Armament was practical and lethal. Early Sabres carried 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns in the nose and wings, a heavy volume of fire for the time and a design choice that matched American ammunition logistics and gun harmonization tactics from the piston era. The Sabre also pioneered advanced optical and radar gun sights in later variants, giving American pilots an edge in aiming and tracking targets, a small technological advantage that would become decisive in the skies over Korea. The Sabre's cockpit was pilot-centered, a clear bubble canopy for wide visibility, straightforward controls, and instrumentation refined for speed. It was not the fastest jet ever built, nor the heaviest armed, but its combination of maneuverability, pilot visibility, reliable engine performance, and ease of maintenance made it perfect for the slashing, high-G dogfights it would soon face. Part 4. The war that tested it. Korea, 1950 to 1953. When North Korea invaded the South in June 1950, the conflict quickly escalated into a full-scale war that drew in the United States and Allied forces. The Korean War was the first large-scale testing ground for jet fighters in sustained combat. Early in the conflict, United Nations Air Forces flew piston-engined and early jet aircraft for ground attack and air support. But in late 1950 and early 1951, a new threat appeared over northwestern Korea, along a narrow zone near the Yalu River that would become infamous as MiG Alley. Their Soviet-designed MiG-15 jets began to contest UN air superiority. The MiG-15 was fast, high-climbing, and carried a powerful armament, including 23mm and 37mm cannon on many variants. It outclassed many of the older Allied fighters at first. The arrival of the F-86 Sabre changed the calculus. Within months, F-86 were deploying to forward bases in Korea, their swept-wing performance allowing them to better match the MiG's speed and climb. The result was a brutal learning ground where tactics, training, technology, and courage were tested simultaneously. Part 5. MiG Alley. Dogfights at the edge of the world. MiG Alley, a sector in northwest Korea close to the Chinese border, was the crucible. It is here that Sabres and MiGs met in a series of dramatic, high-altitude dogfights. The Sabre's handling at near-supersonic speeds, its superior gun sight, and the skill of its pilots allowed many F-86 to attain success against the MiG-15. Pilots learned fast. Boom and zoom tactics, energy management, and the use of chaff and maneuvering to avoid the MiG's heavy cannons. The Sabre's advantage in radar and gunsight technology helped American pilots make their shots count in fleeting engagement windows. These were not clean, Hollywood dogfights. They were chaotic, dangerous, and conducted in biting cold with thin oil, ice, and the constant threat of ground fire. Pilots flew many missions per day, often returning with battle damage, sometimes making forced landings behind friendly lines, sometimes never returning. The courage of those aviators, and the Sabre's relative robustness, cemented its reputation. Part 6: Pilots and Legends. Some names from that time remain legendary. The Sabre produced aces and pioneers. Pilots like James Jabara, one of the first jet aces in history, and Joseph McConnell, who rose to become one of America's top aces in Korea. There were countless other names, unsung in popular history but immortal in squadron records. Flight leaders, wingmen, instructors who trained rookies in the art of jet combat. Those men lived in cramped forward stations, maintained their Sabres under primitive conditions, and flew in bitter cold mixed with monsoonal mud and the roar of artillery from the ground below. Anecdotes painted the human side of the machine. Pilots learned to listen for the Sabre's signature sounds. They learned to read the sky, not just their instruments. Maintenance crews, often young, undertrained, and exhausted, became heroes of their own, pulling engines back to life and making hurried repairs that kept airplanes flying. The Sabre's reliability in those austere conditions saved lives and won battles. Part 7: Technology versus Numbers. What won the air war? It's tempting to reduce success to raw numbers, who shot down how many. But the truth is more nuanced. The F-86 success was not just technology. It was technology married with tactics, logistics, and training. The Sabre's gunsight, its aerodynamic behavior at speed, the quality of U.S. pilot training programs, and superior maintenance and supply chains all combined to blunt the MiG threat. Intelligence and tactics, good leadership, the use of formation flying, and adaptation to changing enemy patterns mattered as much as the aircraft themselves. At the same time, the political and strategic context shaped engagements. The proximity to Chinese and Soviet territory constrained some operations, and intelligence on enemy movements was never perfect. Both sides claimed different tallies of successes in the air. What is clear is that the skies over Korea were contested fiercely, and the F-86 was a key instrument in maintaining UN air superiority for large stretches of the war.
Part 8: Variants, Upgrades, and the Sabre Family. The Sabre did not remain static. Like any successful aircraft, it evolved. Variants improved engines, refined aerodynamics, and added improved gun sights and avionics. The F-86F, for example, became the definitive Korean War variant with a more powerful engine and improved performance. Export versions flew with NATO allies and with air forces around the world, carrying the Sabre's design philosophy into multiple theaters. The platform's adaptability kept it in service for many years after the Korean armistice. North American Aviation learned quickly from combat feedback. Wing fences, fuel management systems, hydraulic improvements, and aerodynamic tweaks were introduced in a steady stream across models. This iterative process, listen, test, upgrade, was central to keeping the Sabre competitive and reliable. Part 9: The Politics of Air Power, Allies, Export, and Global Reach. Beyond Korea, the F-86 became a staple in many Allied air forces. It served in Europe during the early Cold War as a deterrent and a training platform. It helped solidify NATO's early air capabilities and trained whole generations of jet pilots who would later transition to supersonic fighters. For many countries, the Sabre was their first real modern jet fighter, a bridge between the piston past and the jet future. This export also had political weight, providing Sabres to allies strengthened ties, helped standardize tactics, and created interoperable air doctrines across the Western Alliance. The Sabre was not just an airplane, it was a diplomatic and strategic tool. Part 10: The Human Cost and the Reality of War. Stories of victory sit beside stories of loss. Pilots were shot down, wingmen searched for missing comrades, ground crews mourned losses while readying the next sortie. The Sabre's story is inextricable from the human cost of the Korean War: lives cut short, families affected, and a generation marked by the trauma of combat. Documentary work must honor both the technology and the people who depended on it. Part 11: Phasing out and influence on later designs. By the late 1950s, faster, more sophisticated fighters, with supersonic performance and new weapons, began to replace the F-86 in frontline U.S. service. Jets like the F-100 Super Sabre and subsequent generations took the baton. Yet the F-86 influence persisted in airframe knowledge, pilot training doctrine, and maintenance procedures. Lessons from Sabre operations, in logistics, tactical employment, and design improvability, informed the next wave of American fighters. Many air forces kept Sabres in service for years, some into the 1960s and 1970s in secondary roles or with reserve squadrons. For a fighter designed in the late 1940s, that was a remarkable service life and a testament to the soundness of the original concept. Part 12, Legacy, Why the F-86 Matters Today. Ask an aviation historian and they'll point to the Sabre as a turning point. It was the first American swept-wing jet to be produced in quantity, and to fight in sustained combat. It proved that the jet age could be tamed, that pilots, properly trained and equipped, could master the new speeds and altitudes and turn them into tactical advantage. The Sabre helped codify tactics for jet combat, taught whole air arms how to handle jets in war, and produced a cadre of pilots whose experiences would shape aerial doctrine for decades. Even today, when jets smash past Mach numbers that would have been unthinkable in 1950, the F-86's graceful lines remind us of an important pivot in aviation: the move from propellers to turbines, from piston-era gunnery to jet-age sensors and speed. Museums show Sabres under lights. Airshow pilots fly meticulously restored examples. Veterans meet and tell stories. And each retelling keeps that chapter of history alive. Closing scene, an emotional ending. Return to the blue. A Sabre slices the sky, the sun kissing a polished leading edge. Below, the ghosts of the Yalu and the slopes where pilots once fought drift in memory. The F-86 was metal and fire, design and sweat, triumph and grief. It was a machine that carried men into the new era of flight and demanded everything in return. It taught the world how to fight in the jet age and proved that technology, combined with trained human will, could determine the fate of battles. When we speak of the F-86 Sabre, we speak of thunder, of brave pilots, of maintenance crews working by lamplight, and of a generation that stood in the first real war of the jet age. Its roar still echoes in aviation history, a reminder that once, not so long ago, the sky itself was a new battlefield and an airplane called the Sabre stood between the lines.